Hey guys, it's Kate, and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. I'm back with another pile of paper that I'm going to turn into some collage paper and just have some fun getting messy. So I'm working with 3 different kinds of paper today and some different supplies. I'm going to do a quick little overview of what I'm going to use. Use anything you have on hand. Basically, the idea is that it won't smudge or smear when you put it down over your whatever artwork you're working on. So you can use watercolor or something like that if you add some kind of sealer to it, but today I'm going to be using supplies that dry permanent. So think inks, permanent pens and markers. I've got some paint markers here. I have some fine liners that dry waterproof. I've got some acrylic paints. I have some acrylic inks. And I'm actually just using craft paints today. These are just inexpensive store brands in several colors. I also have my homemade alcohol inks that also dry permanent. Some brushes. You can even use a number 2 pencil if you want, which may smear a tiny bit, but not too much. And I've got a few stencils here, but you can even cut shapes out of some construction paper. You can use old mail, you can use old book pages. Today I am using just some plain old thin copy paper. I've got some deli paper. This just comes from a food service store, and I love this for collage because it dries and goes on when you use the matte medium to attach it. It is semi-transparent, so you can actually see whatever you've got going on in the background. So it's a really beautiful finish. And then I've also got just some old magazine pages that I ripped out of the magazine, and we'll get going on these too. So the idea is to have some fun, make marks, make textures, and just develop a nice collection of collage papers that you can use in your artwork. Also, makeup sponges come in handy. This is my handy styrofoam fancy mixing plate. I've got a makeup sponge and my paints over here, a glass of water and a paper towel, and we're good to go. So whatever space you have available, grab whatever supplies you have and let's get going. And maybe you'll pick up a few ideas that you can use to make your own collage paper. So that's kind of my goal here today, and this is fun for me to do, and I've been using so much of the papers. So let's get started. I just grabbed a random color. This is Victorian blue. So I'm just going to get some of that on my page. I'm going to grab my silicone shaper tool. You can use a silicone spatula or anything you want. And I'm just going to add some lines and marks. And one of the neat things about using this on plain old copy paper and some of those sort of absorbent papers is you get kind of a layered effect with your paint. And the nice thing about craft paint specifically is that it tends to dry really quickly. And when I do this, I like to make a lot of papers. So it really helps that it dries quickly and that I'm not covering up every available surface in my house with wet papers. So it helps for storage too. So I've got my base layer. I'm going to come in with one of my stencils and my makeup brush and some white. And I'm just going to stick that right on there. Go in with my makeup sponge and add some marks on here into my stencil. And I'm just kind of blotting. You can do this with a brush or anything like that. And I'm just going through and putting down some texture. Just like this. And you get a really neat little pattern there. I'm going to do some more up here. Do a little bit of rubbing. I'm just trying to get a semi-even coat so that I can get a good pattern going in the background. But I don't care where it is or any of that because I'm going to be cutting this all into pieces later to add to other things that I'm working on. I'm going to go in with a Posca pen on some of these other drying areas, and this is actually pretty dry already. So I'm just going to come in and make some doodly marks, just like this. And it's kind of a neat little color mix. This is a way you can always think about, you know, different color combinations and things like that. All right, we've got one paper done. For this paper, let's try another color. I've got this grape. This is a nice purple color. And I'm going to get my smaller silicone tool and do the same thing. And I might do kind of like a grid. Let's see how this goes. Just like this. And I love the beautiful colors. I'm going to kind of flip this to the side and come across. Just like that. All right. Now let's add some white. And I'm just going to do some kind of blobs on here. So we've got a bit of a pattern going. Just like that. Now you can go in and make some different types of patterns and things. So if you're thinking of contrasts that you might like and thinking of different colors, darks and lights that might go together, I'm grabbing my sepia ink and I'm just going to go in with this kind of scrubby brush I have, and I'm just going to make some marks here into my paper. Just organic marks, and it's kind of mixing with a little bit of that white paint that's still wet, but I think the brown kind of adds a little bit of extra darkness and interest to the paper. And so I'll just add a few marks here. So that's one way you can use inks. And when we get on to some other papers that are a little bit more durable, I might add some additional inks to that. All right, here we go with our next sheet. Okay, so for this one I have another stencil, and I'm grabbing one of my alcohol inks, and I'm just going to give this a couple little sprays. And it leaves this really nice pattern and also a little bit of overspray, which leaves kind of a nice little texture. Now watch on your surface because this will kind of bleed through the paper a bit. So just be careful on what you're working on. This is just contact paper, so I don't really care. And I've already actually ruined it with alcohol ink. So I don't have to worry about it anymore or be precious, which is kind of a nice feeling. But got the alcohol ink on here. That dries pretty quickly. I'm going to grab this gray Posca pen and just kind of do some little doodles through here. Just like this. Don't have to be precious. Just have some fun with it. And there you have it, another paper done. Now I'm on to the deli paper, and this is a lot of fun to work with too. So I'm going to grab my fan brush and snap up the rest of this purple acrylic paint, and you get some kind of interesting marks there. I'm going to grab this navy blue and get some of that, and I'm going to get a little bit more purple also. And I'm going to come back in here with the paint and just make some lines. And maybe go into that blue a bit. And this paper is really kind of thin, so you may have, if you don't kind of hold it, you may have it move around on you a little bit, but sometimes that kind of adds to the look because you can't control it that well. You could tape it down if you want, but I don't really bother. I just want to get some interesting marks, so I'll just do it just like this. And you have this really nice kind of grungy look that's got plenty of texture. And that's really nice to have fun with. And I have some, well, I can go back into the white actually and add some white. And maybe I take a smaller brush and dip it in and make some dots, just to add some brightness to the paper. Now, something to think about is when you're actually using your paper, depending on what your background looks like, you may want paper with really bright colors. You may want some with dark colors. So if you had, let's say, a black or brown or any kind of dark background on your art journal, canvas, whatever it is you're working on, you might want to add some really bright color onto that. So it actually pays to put just some plain white and some very, very light colors on some of these deli papers too. And you can see that dark background that kind of shines through behind it. So I'm actually going to do that here. I'm going to take my fan brush again and add some white curves, just like this. I need some more paint. This is an easy way to go through paint, especially if you have art supplies lying around that you don't really love. Collage pieces are perfect for that. And craft paint is just so inexpensive compared to other paints you can get. You don't really have to care about using it up. You can get another bottle for 50 cents if you want to. Well, maybe close to 50 cents. I don't know. I think I paid close to that for my Hobby Lobby bottles, which is what I'm using today. These Crafters Collection brand. These are 49 cents regular price, and that's in 2024. So that's kind of a steal with today's prices. That's for sure. Okay, I've got my white here. I'm going to maybe do a little bit of marking with one of my favorite tools, and that is this little plastic thing that came over. It's a little protective tube that came over a paintbrush that I bought, and I kept it just to make marks like this. And I'll just add some other marks here for interest over that white. And then we'll call this one done too. Okay, for this one, I went ahead and grabbed my fine liner, and this is the number 10. And it's got a little bit of a thicker tip, but I'm just going to come in and do some sort of random little doodly marks. And I really find that these come in handy for me when I'm working with wet paint, because you can put these over it and get some really fine strokes made with a pen without having to actually work with a pen in wet paint. And so it really helps kind of move the project along, so you don't have to stop and wait for things to dry or anything like that. So I'm just gonna kind of make some shapes here, just some random marks. Maybe I'll make some dashes, patterns. Like I say, you don't have to have stencils or anything fancy, although you certainly can use stencils. I also have stamps that I use, but I don't think I'm going to break those out today. But you can also get some nice marks with stamps. And this deli paper will hold the marks and they won't move as long as you're using permanent marker, paint, something like that. And this is leaving some really nice marks. And as it dries, it just won't really go anywhere. You can see I'm rubbing on this right now and it doesn't move, even though it's kind of like a sort of a waxy feeling paper. It's very absorbent too. All right. Now just for good measure, I'm going to add a couple of sprays of my lilac alcohol ink to this, and it will tint this paper a little bit. It's a really light color, but you can see it much better once it dries and over something white. Okay, I'm going to go into this Amsterdam acrylic ink. This is Sky Blue Light. And I'm just going to come in and kind of doodle around on this. And I love this color. It's this really pretty blue. And just add a few drops here. And I'm going to do something that I did in my last video where I really, really loved the texture. And that is I mixed some gold ink with it. And I'm just going to put a couple of drops right in here, just like that. For this, you want to make sure you have a baby wipe or something handy. But I'm going to crumple this paper so that the colors mix. But deli paper is not completely impervious to moisture, so some of it may leak through. But this will just kind of help spread that color around, and you can get some really beautiful marks and shapes. And look at that. And we can let that dry, and it will add a really, really nice texture to anything. It's just a beautiful color. All right. And you can see you get a little bit of ink or paint on your hands, but got a baby wipe here, and then we'll be good to go as soon as I wipe my hands. Okay, I've got my brayer out for this one and one of my magazine sheets here, and I'm going to use that to roll my brayer on. And actually, what I meant to do was put a couple of dots here. And I'm going to mix this, this is a lime color with the navy blue, so I'm going to add a couple little dots of navy blue to my paper. And I'm going to start doing some rolling. And look at that beautiful color too. And it's going to leave, like I said, this paper is really fine. So if you can kind of go in one direction, that is pretty helpful. And I'm going to let these blend together a little bit, almost like we were using a jelly plate. But you don't actually need a jelly plate to get kind of a nice little print that you can use. And I'm going to let this dry and then do some drawing or doodling over the top of it. And then I'm going to use this to get rid of my excess paint. All right, I've got one more sheet of deli paper. I'm going to do the same thing but with my inks. So I'm going to add little bit of color here, just like that. And maybe I'll grab this violet color and we can mix those a little bit. Now, ink is a little bit more watery than the acrylic paint, but we'll see what we get here. And I can always add a little bit of white or something like that, but this has a nice look to it also. I like that a lot. And it's got this really nice kind of, I don't know, sort of wet look with lots of texture. I'm going to hold this up so you can see. And it's very subtle, and I like that a lot. So I'm going to put that aside. And now we can start with our magazine pages. And why not just continue on with the ink? So I'm going to get some of that violet again and put that on here. A little bit more maybe this time. And why don't we put some of this gorgeous gold on as well? I'm just scattering a couple of dots. And let's see what we get. Oh, I think I found something magical. I'm going to have to maybe play with that some more because that gold mixes with the paint, but I'm getting a little bit of a brownish color because purple and yellow are complementaries, but this has a really interesting effect on that paper. See that? I'm going to let this dry and see what it looks like afterward. That's really beautiful. Okay. Let's grab another piece, and why don't we add with a stencil? So let me grab this crimson red, and I'm just going to put a couple little dollops right in my stencil. That doesn't work as well as it does on a jelly plate. But I am picking up some paint. So that's interesting. Yep, that didn't work so well. So, hey, you win some, you lose some, right? But I got some interesting marks outside there. So I'm going to go in with my purple and maybe even some of this lime and make kind of a multicolored page. I like that. It's interesting. All right, let's add some more up in here. Yeah. And then maybe some white. That's pretty. The magazine has a glossier page, so you can get some really good spread when you use your silicone tool. And I'm just kind of moving that around. Maybe wipe it off on here too. Why not? Okay. And I might take my sponge and just do a little sponge painting on here. And just get messy. Like that. And you can cover your paper as much as you want, or leave it uncovered. Like I would want to cover most of this because it's an advertisement, but actually this side has a lot of text. So maybe I actually want a collage on this side too. And I actually really love this little flower watercolor. That might be something I might actually want to use in a collage. So what I might do, I might go in with this sepia and add a little bit here. Just like this. And hopefully it's not too much. So I'm still getting used to how it spreads on this magazine paper. And this looks okay. It's almost like it's giving it a vintage look. And I'm just going to go over it, but not really go over those flowers very much. And I might try to bring some of this pink in. So I'm going to see if I can find a good color. All right, I'm going to grab this light rose Amsterdam ink. And this is a little bit more opaque than the sepia, but it's kind of this nice, brightly colored pink. And it's really pretty. It's actually one of my favorites to use when I'm journaling and stuff, when I want to get a nice bright color that's not white. And this is nice also. So you get a little bit more coverage. I can still see that sepia coming in from the back. But now this page is toned pink. And now I'm going to put some of my gold right on this plate, just like that, just a few drops. And I'm going to go in with this roll, this tape roll that is basically junk. The tape is gone, but I've been enjoying using it for stamping. I'm going to come right in here with that gold and add some circles. Circles are some of my favorites. And that's going to add some sparkle here. I can use this as kind of a texture element. And I've still got this up here if I want to use it for a collage piece, just the way it looks. And here we go. You can see that gold on there. It's really beautiful. Okay, this is almost dry, so I went ahead and grabbed it again. And I'm going to dip my brush into this gold and add a few splashes right on the paper to add some sparkle. And I'm going to go this way on it too, so I don't just have lines going across. But this will add some really interesting detail. And then we can call this paper done as well. All right, I'm going to grab another magazine page and go in with my brush again to some more ink. Let's pick out another fun color. One of my favorites is this burnt sienna. And I just really love this color. I'm just going to go in with my brush, put my ink down, and make just some interesting marks. And see that really rich orangey color? Oh, it's one of my favorites. And I'm just making some easy circles here and some sort of, I don't know, just going round and round and getting some of that coverage of color on the page and just going over and over again through it to make a nice sort of liney texture with this ink. Now I'm going to come in and do the same thing with this white. I gotta kind of dip in because this has been used quite a bit. All right, got my lid secure. I'm gonna add some of this with my brush also and just keep going with those same marks. And the nice thing about the acrylic ink is that it just has a much nicer spread. And it kind of goes a long way. I mean, it's used a lot in calligraphy and things like that. So it will just really last when you're going around with your brush or however it is you're applying it. I like that. And you can see some of the resist. So this is the P.H. Martin, and the burnt sienna ink was Amsterdam, and you can kind of see how it has a little bit of bubbly texture there. Hopefully the camera picks that up, but you get some interesting resist effects, some almost like cells if you were doing some paint pouring or something, and that can be pretty neat also. I'm going to set this to dry, and then I'm also going to make some other marks on top of it once it does. Let me grab another paper. We've got the GMC Jimmy. That's an old advertisement. I remember a friend of mine used to drive one. Now I'm going to see this gold doesn't have quite the same spread when you're doing it with the silicone tool. It adds such a thin layer, you really can't see it, which is interesting. So I'm going to leave that as is. I'm going to add some yellow right here to the page. And I'm going to come in here and just make some messy marks. my paper is almost like squeaking. So my paint is still wet. I'm going to come in with this navy blue and add just a couple little blobs on there, and we'll see what we get for texture. And that's really cool. Okay, so I am going to wipe off my excess over here. And I'm going to come in with my stylus and make some other scribbly marks right in my wet paint. And that adds some neat texture too. It's almost like writing or something like that. And then we can put this one aside to dry. And you can see how quickly you can go through pages and make yourself a whole bunch of papers. Okay, for this one, I'm going to grab some more of my alcohol ink. I've got teal here. I'm going to give this just a couple of fun sprays and tone the page. And I'm going to come in with my purple and drop some splashes on here, just like that. And you can see it kind of grow and make some cells. And I'm going to set this aside to dry, and you can mark over it or add paint or whatever you like. But I'm going to let this go first and see what we get. All right, I've got 2 sheets left plus my rolly sheet, so we're down to the home stretch. I'm going to grab one of my other stencils here. I've got these sort of letters and numbers, but first I'm going to put a background color on this. And I think I'm going to use this bluegrass green. I've been really liking this color, and it's just this sort of nice, almost like a viridian green. So I'm going to roll this out. And look at that rich color that you get on the paper. It's really nice. Okay, now let's go in. How about we do some black? I don't think we've used any black yet. Okay. Okay, let's go in with our stencil. And that's really nice. I like that. I love the contrast with that black over the green. It's really pretty. And you can get, you know, pretty light with your sponging, or darken it up, or just make it very faint like that and have some really light texture on your paper. Whatever you think you might prefer, and you can do multiple things. And actually, I can even do a second stencil, because why not? You can do whatever you want. It's your paper. And it's fun. So I'm going to grab this little circle pattern one, and maybe I'll add a light color over top of that. And I might go back in with this lime color here and add just a little bit of that to the page. So I'm going to flip my sponge so that I don't have the black side, and get some of this bright color on here. And just experiment with how it looks. And I like that. It's just a lot of contrast, and it's really nice. And this one has different size dots. You could also go in here with a brush. You don't need to have a stencil. The stencil makes it faster, but you can do dots just by hand if you want to. So you really don't need anything special. But if you have some of these things on hand, they just make the process a little bit faster, basically. And you can get some interesting stencils too if you want florals or anything like that. I guess I'm kind of doing the messy graphics today, but I think we'll call this a done paper. And then here is our last one. You know what? I haven't used my palette knife yet, so I think I'll go ahead and use that. And what I might do first is just put some white directly on my palette knife. And I'm going to put down kind of a base layer here. Just messy. Maybe I'll even squirt some right onto my paper. And I don't think I'm going to want to use this person's face on anything, so I'm going to cover this up pretty good. And maybe I'll add some of this purple back in. And you can do anything you want with the color. And that is the beauty of this. You can concentrate on a limited palette, maybe develop your collage paper collection, because you could have, you know, you could organize it by color. You could have a section for purple or something like that, put them in kind of a folder or a box or something like that, and just be able to grab whatever you need. If you're working on a certain color with your palette and you think, boy, I could really use something with purple in it, here you go. It's right here. All right. I think I'm going to grab my stylus for this one again. I really love having scribbles like that and seeing some of that background texture come through. I've noticed I've been really enjoying doing that in a lot of projects lately, on my abstract paintings and all that stuff. Okay. Last but not least, we've got our other paper, and then I'm going to see if I want to add any extra marks to some of the papers that we did already. But maybe for this one, I add some of this lilac color, and why don't I just color in some solid shapes, just like this. And this is kind of a glossy paper, and this goes down really nice over that. Now, it is a little bit tricky when you're going over the acrylic paint, but I'll just kind of keep it over here. Maybe add some scribbles. Maybe add some stamp marks with what I've got left over. And why don't I grab my narrow brush, go into my white, and make some lines. I went through some of my black there. Just like that. And how about I add some little circles here. The more you can make your marks interesting and unique, and circles are always interesting to me, but this is a great way to get out of your comfort zone too. Maybe I want to make some blobs here, just like that. Maybe I want to do some pluses or cross marks. Maybe I want to do little C shapes. and make a pattern. Or L shapes. And overlap. Or maybe I want to do just some messy, sketchy, dry brushing. Can do that too. You can make all kinds of marks. And you don't have to be afraid or precious. You're working on, junky paper, hopefully, and paper that you're kind of saving from the trash can, like old magazines, old mailing pieces, old book pages, anything. You can also use printer paper. All right, what else do I want to add to this? You know what? Why don't we add some ink splashes to this too? Just like this. And that blends really nicely with the paint also. Okay. So I've got this paper where we kind of rolled out that gold. I'm going to put some gold marks on this, I think. So I'm going to put just a couple little drops. I love having the gold on just about everything. It's just nice to have metallics. And so I'm just going to kind of make some little spiral marks maybe. That was one of my favorite pieces from last time. So maybe now I can almost turn it into a bit of a pattern of sorts. And I like how this looks. Yeah, that's good. And there's a little bit of gold in that purple paint in the background also. Okay, here is the page we had our ink on. I'm going to add some purple to this also. And why not some teal? I've got this. I think I'd like to add some gold also to this. And maybe some black too. Maybe for this one, I'll add some marks here and let it almost dry. It's almost got like a watery look where some of that paint is sort of separating. And I really like that. So maybe I'll just go with some gold texture over the top of this ink that we rolled out. And it'll just be a nice kind of golden paper. Yeah. For this one, I think I'd like to add some darkness to this. So I'm going to go back into the black and a stencil. And I've got this nice little texture here that I really love using, and I'm going to use it again. And I'm going to just rub lightly with my sponge, not going to have too much paint on it, and just get that pattern. It's almost like dots and dashes. And I'm going to cover the whole thing. Let's see how that looks. Oh, I love that. That is gorgeous. All right, I think I want to add some more to this one also. And maybe I'll do that with my gold painter's marker. And this one is metallic, and it has a wonderful color. All right, and why don't we add a little bit of black here too? I'm just dry brushing, grabbing some paint, and just plopping it on here. Maybe we add some sort of organic marks over here that are kind of flowy, like that. I kind of like this one, so I'm going to keep it just like it is. For this one, I'm going to add a little bit of this crimson, just a couple little dots. Oh, that's nice. Sort of like a color glaze, and it's nice and bright. All right, I'm back and we are dry except for this one where it's still a little blobby and wet. So I'm going to give you a quick close-up of what we did together today, and hopefully you get some ideas from this on some you can make for yourself. So this is that navy blue and the yellow and the scribbles, which I really love. You can see the gold splashes on this one here where we used our brayer. This is that white one with some darker circles that we did with that circle shaped plastic piece. Some of our silicone tool marks. This is just on plain old copy paper. Same here, copy paper with stencils and scribbles and marks. Here's that gold that we painted on. This is going to be really nice texture to put over something. Same thing here. This is our crumpled piece that's all dry now with the gold and the blue. This is the acrylic inks. Some more scribbles and marks and texture. I love this one with the stencil. That dots and dash stencil is one of my favorites. I just love the marks that it leaves, and it's so quick to cover up a whole page. Here's our fan brush, left some really interesting shapes and marks. Here's a little bit of everything, but I love how kind of grungy it is, but with some nice blue stencils and some gold from our acrylic marker. This. Oh, look at that sheen. That's from that gold ink that we mixed with the purple ink, and then I went over again with some spirals in gold. This is going to be a really gorgeous paper to use on something. Scribbles, marks, alcohol ink. This one I just wanted to keep a little bit simpler with some smaller marks on it. And this one has a lot more color and various things, including that stencil, and my attempt at using a brayer with a stencil works much better on a jelly plate because it's so squishy. Here's that leftover page we had that we just practiced some different marks on. Another one with our gold sort of stamps. We've got a fun little element up here. If you have anything like that in yours, you can always go into that with your brayer or anything around it and kind of knock back some text. But if you see any elements that you like, you can always keep those kind of intact, and it'll kind of remind you to use them too if you pull it out later. And here is that really neat sort of graphic stencil one that we used. I loved. And last but not least, here's our alcohol ink. And I might add some more marks over this or something like that, but for right now, this is fine. So I hope you enjoyed this video and followed along with me, or used this as some inspiration to make some of your own marks on papers. And we have made ourselves another pile of paper. So anyway, have a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, keep creating collage papers.